Be happy.
Be happy.
Be happy. Be happy, mommy.
Come on, keep your chill. Enjoy this time.
Smile.
Smile, smile, my darling.
Honey, you gotta count your blessings.
Welcome to Creative Mamas Unplugged. We are your hosts. I'm Cherice Barton.
And I'm Shelly Hutchinson. Creative Mamas Unplugged is a podcast where we navigate the hell out of being a creative mom with humor and heart.
We will have honest conversations,
Hear wise words from fellow badass mamas,
and share hilarious stories around motherhood for some much-needed comic relief. Listen, motherhood is the most creative, most difficult job in the world. You are not alone, and you deserve to be happy.
Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with the incredible Renae Williams Niles. Renae shares with us her wisdom on balancing the sandwich generation, caring for both aging parents and children while still finding time to prioritize ourselves. She reflects on her travels for her meaningful work and the honor of co-producing the nation's Juneteenth celebration at the Hollywood Bowl. Renae's journey is one of grace, strength, and service. Don't miss this heartfelt and inspiring conversation.
You know, you were talking about this most recent shift that you've made in being a freelancer and consulting. That's what you're doing primarily, right? And having that flexibility and whatnot. And that has to do with caring for your parents, which we've talked about too on this podcast, this, sandwich generation that we're in, that combined with the hormonal changes we go through in midlife. So it's like you're getting it from all angles.
It is. And you're right. And all of this happening at the same time, right? And because I was a relatively young mom, I could be a grandmother, right, in the next couple of years, while also taking care of my mom, which is a collective effort, right? And part of doing that. And I will say that, and I just recently saw a film, M Factor, I think it's called, and really just more and more of us talking about it, right? There's times where I now look back and I wonder about some of my previous bosses or mentors who were CEOs, right, of major institutions. They must have been going through some of this. How in the world could that possibly be? I will also share that as I was departing one position in 2021, literally the night of our fundraiser, I started having pain like no other. And finally, back and forth, doctors, hospital, we found out that I had really bad fibroids, which I'd never had before. And so I had to have a hysterectomy 3 weeks after starting my position with the LA Phil. So talk about like being hit right in the face, so to speak, with that reality. But what I will say is my newfound work family, I actually ended up having a small community. There was a few of us that had been through a very similar situation. And so you end up kind of finding your support, right? One way or another. And right now my husband and I are trying to collectively care for his parents, his mom and his stepfather. And in my case, my mom. And fortunately, my mother was an only child. I'm dealing with, multiple family issues and just we're all trying to do the best we can, both financially and emotionally. And I am finding that this is the reality in so many people. And I said something once to a choreographer who I've known for many years, and she's also an only child living in a different state than her mom. At least, for us, we have, for the most part, our family nearby. But she's, freelance choreographer doing exceptional work. But she's grappling with, what do I do? My mom needs me. Do I move back home? And I said to her, and this, again, this is just my feeling that, and this is the decision that I came to. For right now, if I can continue to make money in the ways that find me joy, and that can help facilitate someone to come in and more properly care for my mom, who is better trained to provide that caregiving, then I think that is what is going to be best for us. And what I have said to my own children, as much as possible and for as long as possible, I want them to be my children, not my caregivers. So Greg and I right now are trying to we're trying to save up as much as possible so that our children can be our children as we age. That is my hope for them. For my mom, my brother and I were doing a combination of things. But when I said this to this particular choreographer, she said, thank you, because I could tell that she was feeling some guilt. And I'm hoping that it was helpful for her because she needs to continue to create work. And her mom needs to continue to see her create work and to know that that is okay. And that she can find ways of helping and supporting her mom while still living and being her beautiful and creative self.
Oh, I can tell Shelly's shaking her head. She looks like she's crying.
Because you're the ultimate example. Like, people come to you because of your example and because of what you do in the world and how you show up for people. And to say that about your kids, you're holding so much space for them to be their own people. And you've shown them through your relationship with them that you're still being and becoming your own person. And you're going to continue to do that. And you want the same for them up until the point where you feel like you might not even be able to do it anymore. You still want them to continue to be the people they're supposed to be. And it's just so beautiful and freeing. And gosh, I imagine being on the receiving end of that advice, the weight is off because it's perfect. You're absolutely right. And I am curious as to how much guilt has gotten in the way of so many great opportunities or so many great creative movements for women, especially for moms, especially, how much that unearned emotion that it is has gotten in the way of what we could really be, who we could really be, or what we could really do that has great impact.
I completely agree. And it's interesting too, a lot of people have said, is particularly because so much of my career has been in dance here in Los Angeles. And so you can imagine how many people have said, have you ever lived in New York? Are you moving to New York? Those that are close to me know that I refer to New York as my happy place, which I do. I love it there. But I don't know, after 30 years, I actually feel a sense of pride to do what I've been privileged to do here in Los Angeles, because we've got an abundance and we've got richness right here that we can all contribute towards. And yes, to your point, there have been a couple of things that I have either said no to or I just haven't applied because of that reality of not wanting to have to ask those questions of not being in the same state as my mom. But I also feel incredibly fulfilled with what I've been able to say yes to. I certainly haven't felt a loss there. I also want to acknowledge, no, there certainly have been possibilities that I have declined. And some of it actually was also not wanting to be bi-coastal and having children, school-age kids. So certainly that has been part of the decision-making.
I have a question. You sent in a few photos, which I love all of them, of you and the family and of you. I think, was that in Taiwan?
Yeah. My second trip to Taiwan, my first trip, I was part of a group of like 10 of us. My second trip, I was one-on-one with my guide. And we went, one of our visits was a contemporary dance company that was embedded within one of the I think 14 or so indigenous communities. And it just so happened on the day of our arrival, I think it was the chief's daughter who was getting married. So they dressed us in the traditional wardrobe. They taught us the circle dance, few steps, and literally I hopped on the back of a moped. We went into the community, and the reception was already in place. And literally they just had me come into the circle and doing the circle dance with them as part of the wedding reception. And then afterwards, so that photo is with one of the elders of the community. And through the translator, she said to me, "You look like one of us." And through the translator, I said, "You actually look like my grandmother."
Wow. What a beautiful experience.
It was just absolutely powerful and heartwarming. And honestly, to be a Black woman in particular in Taiwan and to be received that way, when I talk about Taiwan, that's why I get kind of emotional. And I would say every day was like that, where I was meeting with certain artists, opera, music, dance, and just incredibly warm and welcoming. And a couple of years later, I was finally able to bring Cloudgate, which is this phenomenal dance company based there in Taipei.
Wow.
Renae, have your children ever traveled with you for work, or is that something that you were open to as they were growing and as you were moving through your career?
Yes and no. I think probably more so my son Jackson has done more of that, particularly because my ex-husband and I, we literally split the week in half with our daughters. And so sometimes it wasn't always possible, but they have come on some trips with me. We do, as a family, we prioritize international travel. And so that we've done a lot of with the kids, with all of them. And now I have a son-in-law. So, right. So the family keeps growing, but so a little, not quite as much.
And was it ever, because I know sometimes when I'm traveling, I feel like I need to, if I'm traveling for work, I need to attach the vacation on the end of it, because I just feel like it's efficiency, right? But it's also, it ends up being quite disastrous at times because you don't get that space to go by yourself and do all of the important work that you need to do and have the space to think and all of that. Did you ever do any of that? Because you've traveled to some pretty incredible places.
Have we ever? No, I think it's tended to be one or the other. I'm trying to think, but when we've gone certain places, it is not unusual for me to say, "Oh, if such and such is performing, then we're all going to go and do that." Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, whether they like it or not. But usually if it's a family trip, vacation, it's a little separate. There are many times where my husband will come, especially if I'm somewhere. And again, I'm the guest of, so I need to stay there, right, a good amount of time. So there's definitely a lot of that. And then every year there's a big conference in New York, APAP conference. It's kind of known as the National International Booking Conference for the nonprofit side of touring. And in fact, I'm now on that board, just stepped down as board chair. So I've been going to that conference for close to 30 years. And so different family members have come during that time. And sometimes I see them and sometimes I don't. But otherwise, yeah, we try to separate it, I guess, as much as possible.
Good idea. Probably the best.
Shelly and I met in person for the first time. We had connected through Facebook, and we were Facebook friends. And when my kids were 2 and 4, and that was when we had first started Access Connect, the program that you know about. And we were going to New York. I believe it might have been for our first audition, and it was at the Baryshnikov Art Center. I took my kids everywhere with me. So I was like, "You're coming on the plane," and took them to New York. And, because I have so many dancers that I can called upon to babysit. I knew I was covered in that way. I believe my mom might have been there for that particular trip. I went several times with the kids, but it was that time in particular, and it was winter. I just put a post out on Facebook and I was like, hey, mamas out there, if any of you have toys or like things that, anything that my kids could maybe play with in the hotel room, please hit me up. Well, Shelly took the train from Jersey with, I think it was like a hockey bag, a duffel bag, whatever it was, full of toys, full of, and she hauled it all the way and like dropped it at the hotel. And I was I just fell in love with her. I was like, that's a mom supporting a mom,
I love that.
And
Well, also, I was like, I think the side note, wasn't it like, ignore the probably snot or like crayon markers or goldfish crackers like shoved in the cracks of the toys. Ignore all that. Other than that, it's fun.
Right? I love it.
That's a bold move, sharing your kids' toys with another mom. Like, luckily,
It's
Sure.
generosity. I love that.
yeah. But I mean, I personally had a lot of fun bringing the girls every time I went to New York, just because it was fun for them. And again, I had the help of the dancers, thank God, to be able to, and they would have fun with these dancers. So much fun. They'd be like, when are the dancers going to babysit us again? And I could bring them to the studio because it was, my own company. I felt that, the freedom to be able to like bring them in. And it was, it was lovely. When I do contract work as a choreographer, I don't bring my children, right? But I'm navigating that. And we had spoke earlier about the length of trips and trying to keep it short. That's what I try to do too. I try to keep my trips as short as possible or do the prep work ahead of time so that I can create in a more condensed, amount of time. And actually, I'm creating a work for Idaho Ballet in January. And, the director is a dad, and everyone in that company is so supportive of mothers. And there was just such a beautiful feeling that I had for them. And I said, can we do this in 2 weeks? Because I'm doing a shorter work that will be developed into a larger work. So I said, can we do this in 2 weeks? And then I was like, I shouldn't ask, but maybe I'll ask. I said, would there be any way that I could come for 1 week, come back home for a week, and then return for another week? And they said, absolutely, no problem. And I was so touched by that. I really was touched by that. And we have talked about that on the podcast too, about having parents in leadership roles that really understand that challenge we have and having the flexibility to be able to accommodate that, because the gratitude we feel and just the fact that I felt seen and understood with no, and I almost didn't ask because, we naturally just kind of feel embarrassed or like, oh, I shouldn't, I'm supposed to do it on my own behind the curtain without anyone knowing, and so maybe it's a combination of, yes, people in leadership understanding more and or it's up to us to demand it more.
I agree. And I do feel like that more of that is happening, even in terms of younger voices, right? And certainly as I've gotten older, I've felt a bit more confidence to be able to say certain things that I wouldn't have, in my younger time. And then I do think there's a little bit of, when you have trained as a dancer, that there's a little bit of like, suck it up.
Yes.
Right? And so that I do believe is shifting. And I witnessed that actually while I was at USC Kaufman in particular, amongst our students and faculty, that there's more agency, I think, given across the board.
I love that. I have one last question for you, and it has to do with another one of your photos. There is that photo of you being interviewed on CNN, and I believe it's when you produced the Juneteenth celebration at the Hollywood Bowl. I mean, how impressive is that? But what was that experience like? And were your kids watching that?
They were. And I have to say, as you can imagine, something like that, LA Phil was a co-producer with LA or Live Nation Urban, and another amazing mom who oversees programming at the Hollywood Bowl and also some of the non-LA Phil classical programming, Joanna Reese. So another amazing mom whose daughter is incredible. And so together, kind of co-producing that was a major feat. We weren't sure if I was going to be on CNN. And then that day I'm at the bowl and I get a phone call. Can you go down to the studio right now? Okay. And so at one point I'm sitting in the dark room waiting for the anchor person to come on. And I'm literally texting the family chat to be on CNN. So you might want to turn it on now, right? But yes, so that was definitely a surprise. But I just felt very honored to be able to represent the LA Phil, especially being relatively new to the Phil at the time, but really representing our shared pride in being able to co-produce what became the nation's Juneteenth celebration that year. And another happy moment, there are many people who we all look up to, whether they know it or not. And no surprise, Debbie Allen was one of those individuals for me. And I've had the great joy of knowing Debbie and Norm and for quite some time, but also at Juneteenth at the Hollywood Bowl, I'm sitting next to Debbie Allen and Norm Nixon. And that was just one of those many moments where I'm thinking, who am I? What reality am I in?
You are the epitome of grace and heart. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. Thank you for being my friend.
Thank you both. And just to be able to be in this shared space with both of you, I was both shocked and absolutely floored to be asked. So thank you both.
Thank you so much. And I keep thinking how lucky your girls are and your son. But having a mom like you and doing what you do and making such a strong impact on the world. And like Cher said, with such grace and beauty and honesty, lucky. And everything that you're saying, I just feel like I want you to be on that news broadcast, CNN, all the time. You need to be out there all the time. Everyone needs to hear what you are saying and see what you are doing because it's just so important.
Just hope that I can still be of value and make an impact.
Creative Mamas Unplugged is produced by Breatheasy Productions with music by Jeremy Jurin. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to give my mama 5 stars and keep coming back. Thanks to us kids, there are plenty of stories to tell. And you are not alone. Bye for now.